And it's a controversial debate, this one, isn't it? But here's the issue. The police say that the windows of the car that Dawn Butler was driving in were tinted, so they had no idea of her ethnicity.
I wouldn't know whether that is so or not. What I do know is that if the police ever believe that they have reason to stop a car, and it might be any one of a number of reasons, but if they believe they have that reason, they've got to feel, if they're going to do their job, and we're always saying, the police are too light on burglary, and the police don't do this, and the police don't do that. If they're to do their job, they've got to have the confidence to be able to say, I'm going to stop this car, and whether the person driving it is white, black, young, old, gay, straight, whatever it may be, I feel that I'm able to do that. The police have got to not think, oh dear, I wonder who is driving that car.
And of course, any time the police pull any of us over, it's an annoyance. No one wants to be pulled over by the police, but it's an acceptance, isn't it, that we're all part of this system. And in some ways, if we're pulled over, it shows the system is working. What's so fascinating about Dawn Butler's complaint is she thinks the complete opposite. She thinks the fact that she was pulled over shows that the system is not working, that it's systemically racist.
Well, I think that is a nonsense. We get the same claims made when the police do stop and search, for example.
Yes.
Of people on foot whom they believe they've got reason to stop and search. And they've got to be able to feel free to do that. And they've got to be able to use their own judgment and not immediately be confronted by people airing grievances and claiming that it's all because of their ethnicity or whatever it might be. And I do feel that very strongly, and I've been stopped by the police. I've never resented it. They've never been anything other than polite, and they had good reason to stop me. I remember once when I was a student driving the Morris Minor that I refer to. Of course, in those days, men quite often had long hair, so they probably thought they were driving up behind a long-haired bloke driving an old banger at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they just had a burglary reported, and they stopped me. And I said, no, I'm terribly sorry, I haven't burgled anybody, and they laughed. But they had a right to stop me, surely.
The issue that we now have, Anne, as well, is that the advent of all of this mobile technology means everyone is filming the police at work. And it feels like they, at times, in the case of Dawn Butler, or people like Dawn Butler, that maybe they're looking for the police to actually have done something wrong. But let's have a little listen to this clip of Dawn Butler that she recorded the police, where they did seem to be perfectly polite, and I'll get you to react off the back.
If you're just profiling people who are driving outside their area, I think that's a ridiculous reason to stop. If you're profiling people who are driving a certain type of car, that's an inappropriate reason to stop. And if you're profiling people because of the colour of their skin, that's an inappropriate reason to stop people. Now the thing is this, I've already explained, I've had no reason, I've got no concern with how the officer stopped me. It's very polite. What I'm questioning is the reason for the stop, and that worries me.
And one of the issues is that Dawn Butler is, of course, allowed to release and post to the world and then have it run all over the media, this clip. But the police that actually did have body cams on have been told that they're not able to release their footage showing the entire incident.
Yes, and that is one of the problems, and they should be able to do that. And very often we find confidentiality rules, data protection, whatever it may be, all work one way. And to my mind, if somebody has said the police were unreasonable, if they've actually said that, then at that point, the police should be able to release all the footage. And if one side can release the footage, the other side should be able to release the footage.
Exactly, because it's fair. I mean, and increasingly I feel like the police are just coming under attack from all angles, and we saw that disturbing research released yesterday. Well, actually, sorry, it's not research, it's hard statistics showing that attacks on Met police officers over the past 3 months have increased by 37%. I'm talking physical attacks, assault. And we had Ken Marsh from the Met Police Federation on yesterday, and he thinks that it's no coincidence that this increase in attacks comes at the same time as the protests over coronavirus and the protests over Black Lives Matter.
Yes, I mean, if people feel that they can protest with impunity, and we should remember the scenes of people pulling down statues, that's an act of vandalism. Doesn't matter what the motive is, it's an act of vandalism. People pulling down statues and the police just standing by and watching. And therefore people think, oh, it's all right, they can't actually do very much, and we don't like them, so we'll attack them. And unless somebody is acting in self-defense, there is never any reason at all to attack a police officer.
Do you worry that lawlessness is on the rise?
Oh, it's been on the rise for a long time. I think what we've got now is a horrible combination. Lawlessness is on the rise. Drug offences are becoming very serious indeed, and the police don't really have the mechanisms for dealing with them. So we've got that going on, but we've also got a very overstretched, undermanned police force, which again is the accumulation of years. It's not something that suddenly just happened. And that combination means that police have to prioritise, which in turn means that there are certain things they're not actually spending much time on. And that is a very dangerous situation. But the most dangerous thing of all is for people to believe that they can just attack the police and that it won't be treated as something very serious. And there was a time when if you attacked a police officer or a prison officer, you were at risk of much higher penalty than if you attacked anybody else, because we accept that we send those specific groups on a daily basis to deal with people who are violent. We accept that is what we do, therefore we owe them added protection.
I think it would be very popular if this government did crack down on law and order.
Well, I think it would, and not only popular. I mean, I think it's what they should do anyway. I think it would be moral, not just popular. I mean, I have made documentaries in the past about ordinary citizens living in places where their lives are made a daily misery. They can't go out after 6 o'clock at night. All around them, there's violence and vandalism and thuggery and drug dealing, and they just, they are what I always called, when I was in the House of Commons, the forgotten decent. And so it would be a moral thing to clap down on law and order. And let me say right now, that if we were to get on top of the drugs menace, that accounts for 30% of all crime and for about 80% of all acquisitive crime. We'd make a completely disproportionate impact on the crime figures if we just had the guts to go to war on drugs.
No, absolutely. And I just want to ask you quickly before you go about one other issue that you raised in your column, which is the terrible way that the BBC are now treating older folk. And we've obviously seen it with the licence fee. But you also point out that Eggheads, that very popular quiz on the BBC has been dropped because apparently the audience is too old. And you say that's another case of the corporation writing off 12 million pensioners as not being worth catering for. Tell me a little bit about your anger.
But they're still required to pay the licence fee. Now, of course, I'm not saying that 12 million pensioners all watch Eggheads or all watch any particular programme, but it's the fact that it can be given as a reason that, the audience is too old, that could ever be a reason, given that there are 12 million pensioners, for just scuppering something that is very popular and that has been very successful. And of course I was raising it because I happen to enjoy Eggheads very much.
No, it's an outrage. It's an outrage. And the irony with this whole thing, Anne, is that older folk remain very loyal to the BBC. And actually, it's young people that aren't really that interested anyway. Yet the BBC is so craven that they're desperate to please these people that are much more interested in Netflix or TikTok or whatever else.
And I think that has been the case for a very long while. The BBC is always looking to be what it calls edgy. Which generally isn't anything more than more violence, more sex, more anti-authority, more whatever it may be, wants to be edgy. Now, who wants to be edgy? Is it the young? I doubt it. I think they're off finding their own edge, quite honestly.
Yes, indeed.